What do an Ohio politician and a former Hollywood wildchild have in common? At first glance, JD Vance and Lindsay Lohan occupy completely different worlds. One is a U.S. senator celebrated by populist conservatives. The other is a tabloid-famous actress known for teen movies and public scandals. Connecting them sounds like a bizarre riddle or an internet conspiracy fever dream. Big oil money, a Midwestern political campaign, and a movie star's escape to Dubai. How could these threads possibly weave together? Welcome to a deep dive where real-world facts meet speculative intrigue. In this video essay, we'll explore the strange alleged connections between big oil, JD Vance, and Lindsay Lohan. We'll uncover how fossil fuel interests quietly seep into politics and pop culture alike. This journey will take us from the halls of Congress to the nightclubs of Dubai, blending documented evidence with a conspiratorial narrative style. By the end, you might see how a U.S. senator and a former Disney starlet could be players, witting or not, in the same vast game, a game dominated by big oil's influence on our world. Buckle up, this story traverses political finance, celebrity exile, petro-states, and media manipulation. It will feel at times like a conspiracy thriller, but remember, the strangest conspiracies often hide in plain sight. JD Vance rose to prominence telling the story of forgotten working-class Americans in his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. He styled himself as an outsider-turned-populist, a venture capitalist who moved back to Ohio to champion the common folk. But after riding a wave of nationalist rhetoric into the U.S. Senate, Vance's outsider image took a curious turn. He seems to have cozied up to some of the most deep-pocketed insiders around, namely, the oil and gas industry. Follow the money. During his 2022 Senate campaign in Ohio, JD Vance became one of the top 20 recipients of oil and gas donations nationwide. In just a few years of political fundraising, he amassed nearly $350,000 from oil and gas interests. For a self-proclaimed champion of Ohio's working people, Vance had a lot of love coming from fossil fuel companies and executives. It wasn't just grassroots support flowing into his coffers. It was big oil money, and plenty of it. One example, an Ohio-based natural gas magnate and his wife funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars into super PACs supporting Vance. These gas industry billionaires even set up a dark money group that spent lavishly to boost Vance's campaign. And why not? To them, Vance was a promising investment. They knew a Senator Vance would be friendly to fossil fuels, and he has not disappointed. Once in office, Vance became an eager mouthpiece for oil and gas interests. He penned op-eds and gave speeches glorifying hydraulic fracking, in his state's shale regions, insisting that more drilling in Appalachia would lead Ohio to a brighter future. He downplayed the environmental and health risks of fracking, glossing over incidents in his own state, like a massive methane gas leak at a well in 2018, one of the worst in history. While scientists warn of climate catastrophe, Vance's priority has been clear: defend fossil fuels at all costs. He lambasted the current administration's investments in clean energy, accusing leaders of demonizing our most reliable sources of power, code for coal, oil, and gas. He even introduced legislation to repeal rules that cut climate-warming methane leaks and to gut emissions standards on vehicles. Every one of these moves would ease restrictions on fossil fuel companies or slow the transition to renewables. Conveniently, those are exactly the outcomes Vance's big donors desire. It gets more intriguing. Vance isn't just politically aligned with big oil, he's personally invested. Financial disclosures suggest that Vance, a millionaire venture capitalist, holds stakes in energy companies. In other words, when oil and gas firms thrive, JD Vance profits directly. Every time gas prices surge or oil company stock dividends swell, Senator Vance likely hears a ka-ching in his portfolio. This creates a feedback loop. Industry money helps elect him, he pushes their agenda in Washington, and both he and his donors reap the rewards. Critics argue that Vance has become big oil's loyal soldier in the Senate. Remember, this is a man who once acknowledged climate change as a serious problem and praised solar power. That was back in 2020, before he decided to run for office with Donald Trump's endorsement. By 2022, candidate Vance had flip-flopped to climate skepticism and fossil fuel boosterism to please the MAGA base, and, not coincidentally, his oil benefactors. It's almost as if the hundreds of thousands in campaign cash and perhaps a quiet understanding of who butters his bread guided Vance's ideological evolution. From a conspiratorial view, one might say JD Vance sold his soul to big oil. Of course, he would never phrase it that way. He'd talk about jobs, energy independence, fighting elite environmentalists on behalf of regular Americans. But connect the dots. The money, the policy stances, the change in tune. The oil industry's fingerprints are all over Vance's young political career. A freshman senator from Ohio is doing the bidding of an industry that's historically manipulated Washington for its own gain. We've seen this story before with countless politicians. Vance is just a fresh face on the scene reading from a very old script. Meanwhile, in a completely different sphere, we have Lindsay Lohan. In the early 2000s, Lindsay was Hollywood royalty in the making, a talented child actress who became a teen idol with films like Mean Girls. But as the decade wore on, she became better known for DUIs, rehab stints, legal troubles, and non-stop tabloid drama. By the early 2010s, Lohan's acting career was sputtering and her personal life was a mess plastered across TMZ. She was the quintessential troubled starlet, hounded by paparazzi, betrayed by hangers-on, and unable to escape a party girl image. Then something unexpected happened. Around 2014, Lindsay Lohan effectively vanished from Hollywood. She didn't just step back from the spotlight, she physically removed herself from its reach. Lohan moved overseas, first spending time in London and Greece, and eventually settling in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates by 2015. The once ubiquitous paparazzi magnets suddenly became elusive. American tabloids scratched their heads. Why Dubai? Lohan's own explanation was straightforward: privacy. In Dubai, strict laws outlaw invasive paparazzi photography. For someone who'd been relentlessly surveilled by cameras since age 11, the promise of no paparazzi allowed was paradise. Lindsay has said that in Dubai she can actually live a normal life, go to dinner, raise a family, be a human being without tabloids breathing down her neck. In a sense, this move was an act of personal salvation, a way to escape the toxic fishbowl of LA celebrity life. But here's where the story gets intriguing. Dubai is no ordinary place for a fallen Hollywood star to land. It is a glittering metropolis built on petrodollar wealth, a city that rose from the desert largely thanks to oil, then reinvented itself as a global luxury hub. By relocating to Dubai, Lindsay Lohan stepped into a world shaped by the very petro-state forces that have defined global power for decades. And soon, her life began to intertwine with figures and influences that trace back to big oil money in surprising ways. In Dubai, Lohan found not only respite but a new social circle, one that included billionaire investors, royalty, and power brokers of the Middle East. Freed from the snickering gaze of Hollywood, she was embraced in a region where her fame took on a different glow. She opened a high-end beach club in Greece, financed in part by Middle Eastern partners, and became something of an entrepreneur. But more notably, she started appearing alongside influential leaders. In 2017, Lindsay Lohan was photographed meeting Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, discussing the Syrian refugee crisis. She visited refugee camps and expressed heartfelt concern for humanitarian issues. The American press was stunned. Lindsay Lohan, once lampooned as a party girl, now an advocate for refugees on the world stage? Around the same time, Lohan also showed a growing interest in Middle Eastern culture and religion. She studied Islam. Paparazzi even snapped her carrying a Quran in New York, fueling speculation that she might convert. She adopted modest fashion at times, wearing a hijab-like headscarf at a London modest fashion event. Arab media began to take a keen interest. To many in the Muslim world, seeing a famous Western actress respectfully engaging with Islam was a positive curiosity. Lindsay started getting favorable coverage in Middle Eastern press, a stark contrast to the relentless mockery she faced in the US. For once, she was being celebrated for something other than a mugshot. Then came the rumor that truly blurred the lines between celebrity gossip and geopolitical intrigue. Reports emerged linking Lindsay Lohan to Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, one of the most powerful and oil-rich men on the planet. Tabloids claimed MBS was courting Lindsay, flying her around on private jets and lavishing her with gifts, even a credit card. It seemed unbelievable. An actress known for her be fully loaded and the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia? Lohan's father publicly denied any romance, insisting that Lindsay and MBS were just friends. Indeed, Lindsay does have many friends in high places in the Middle East and she's huge out there, as her father put it. Her rep said she met the prince only once at a Grand Prix race. But still, the idea of this connection sent imaginations wild. Think about it. Lindsay Lohan, who less than a decade earlier was stumbling out of nightclubs in LA, was now being mentioned in the same breath as a powerful Gulf monarch who controls one of the world's largest oil reserves. One Middle East analyst quipped that America's closest tie to MBS wasn't a diplomat or a CEO, but Lindsay Lohan. It's the kind of bizarre reality that sounds ripped from a pulp thriller or a conspiracy forum, except it was reported by credible outlets. Even if the relationship was platonic and respectful, as Lohan's family says, the fact she was in that orbit at all is telling. In Dubai, Lindsay also found love on her own terms. She married a Dubai-based financier and recently welcomed a baby. She's settled into a quieter life, far from Hollywood's glare, enjoying the security and luxury that the Gulf can offer. But make no mistake, that luxury is underwritten by decades of oil wealth that transformed the region. Dubai's glittering malls, five-star hotels, and exclusive gated communities where celebrities reside are the fruits of a global petroleum boom. In a poetic way, one could say Lindsay escaped the chaos of Hollywood by taking refuge under Big Oil's wing. Not directly as an employee, of course, but by embedding herself in a society built by oil fortunes. And the Middle East has gained from her presence too. Petro-states like the UAE and Saudi Arabia have long been on a mission to polish their global image. They want the world to see them not just as oil fields and conservative regimes, but as modern centers of art, tourism, and pop culture. What better way to do that than to host Western celebrities? Whether intentional or not, Lindsay Lohan became a sort of informal ambassador of Dubai's openness. Her interviews praise the city's privacy and normalcy. Her very life there broadcasts a message. Look, even a famous American can be happy here. We're not so different after all. It's invaluable PR for a region often scrutinized for its strict laws and human rights issues. In the era of influencer culture, having someone like Lohan on your turf is a soft power victory for petro-states. From a conspiracy theory standpoint, you might wonder, was Lohan simply fleeing paparazzi or was she guided eastward by unseen forces? Did oil-rich power players intentionally provide her a safe harbor, ingratiating a Hollywood face into their sphere for clout? There's no hard evidence of a grand plan, but it's undeniable that Lohan's trajectory dovetailed neatly with the Middle East's PR aspirations. The once scandalous star found redemption in an oasis built by oil money. Now we have two parallel stories. A U.S. senator bankrolled by oil interests, and a celebrity reborn in an oil-rich land. It's time to connect the dots and see the bigger picture. This isn't just about Vance or Lohan individually, it's about how big oil's influence seeps into every corner of society, from politics to pop culture. Consider these puzzle pieces side by side. Political influence. JD Vance owes a chunk of his power to oil and gas money. Fossil fuel execs and PACs fund his rise, and in return he champions their agenda in government. He's part of a long tradition of politicians doing big oil's bidding. Cultural influence. Lindsay Lohan, a faded Hollywood star, finds a new life in a Middle Eastern petro-state. Her celebrity is rehabilitated and celebrated in a society built by oil wealth, indirectly serving the PR interests of that society. Media and image. The oil industry doesn't just drill wells, it carefully crafts narratives. In the 2000s and 2010s, Big Oil spent millions on lobbying and advertising to shape public opinion. They paid think tanks to cast doubt on climate science and aired glossy ads about clean coal and how natural gas means progress. At the same time, oil-rich nations began investing in entertainment, sponsoring film festivals, bankrolling Hollywood films, and attracting Western stars to events in Riyadh, Doha, and Dubai. Early 2000s context. Remember, the early 2000s, Lohan's heyday, were the era of oil-driven geopolitics. The US invaded Iraq amid slogans of freedom, but many say it was really about oil control. Oil prices boomed, oil companies reaped record profits, and SUVs guzzling gasoline became cultural icons. It was a time of petro-influence, even if we didn't always call it that. In those years, Big Oil had every incentive to keep American lifestyle and policy tilted in their favor, and largely, they succeeded. 2020s context. Fast forward to the 2020s, Vance's domain. Climate change is a burning issue, renewable energy is rising. Big Oil is arguably fighting for its life, so it doubles down on influence. Oil executives pour unprecedented sums into campaigns like Trump's and Vance's, expecting favorable policies in return. Simultaneously, petro-states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE launch ambitious projects to remain globally relevant as oil inevitably declines. They host global summits, buy English football clubs, lure movie productions, and yes, welcome celebrities to live or vacation under their hospitality. All of it expands their influence beyond oil. In this grand tapestry, the stories of JD Vance and Lindsay Lohan are like two distant motifs made of the same thread. Big Oil's thread runs through both, one openly, campaign donations and policy, the other more subtly, providing the milieu for a celebrity's second act. It's a reminder that the influence of oil money is pervasive. It's not confined to refineries and gas pumps. It extends into our governance, our culture, our very imagination of what power looks like. The media has often reported on these pieces separately. A campaign finance article here, a celebrity profile there. But a conspiratorial lens asks, are these pieces connected? Is there an unseen web linking the senator, the starlet, and the oil barons? Let's entertain that thought. Imagine a web of influence where at one node you have an oil CEO writing big checks to politicians like Vance, and at another node a petro prince offering friendship or at least VIP treatment to celebrities like Lohan. The goal at both nodes is the same: extend the reach of the oil empire. In politics it buys favorable laws and subsidies. In culture it buys goodwill, normalizes opulence, distracts from controversies. It's not a formal conspiracy with secret meetings, it's more of a confluence of interests. Oil money wants influence everywhere, so it naturally finds its way everywhere. Think about how big oil has quietly shaped media narratives over the years. News networks rarely challenge the oil industry too hard, perhaps because those networks are sponsored by endless car and gas ads. In the 2000s, how often did you see a critical take on oil companies on TV? Rarely, and if so, it was muted. Oil companies even directly produced content, glossy, sponsored segments about innovation in energy that never mentioned climate change. Public relations 101, and it worked. Meanwhile, Hollywood, dependent on investment and eager global markets, wasn't about to rock the boat. Sure, an occasional eco-documentary like An Inconvenient Truth would make waves, but mainstream blockbusters continued glorifying a consumption-heavy, petrol-powered lifestyle. Fast cars, private jets, lavish mansions, essentially free advertising for the credo that oil enables luxury and freedom. On the flip side, consider how oil-rich countries strategically leveraged celebrity culture to their advantage. It's no coincidence that as Western criticism of Gulf states' politics grew in the 2010s, those same states began hosting concerts, sports events, and film shoots featuring Western stars. They started their own glamorous film festivals and invited A-list actors. They paid influencers to tour their new megacities and post rosy Instagram stories. All of this is sometimes derided as image laundering or sports washing in the case of buying up sports teams and events, but it's extremely effective. Celebrities lend credibility and excitement, turning the narrative from human rights concerns to, wow, look at that cool concert in Riyadh, or isn't Dubai such a luxury hotspot? In that context, Lindsay Lohan's high-profile relocation to Dubai was a PR gift. Here was a Western celeb voluntarily choosing the Middle East over Los Angeles and loving it. That's a powerful narrative shift. No, JD Vance and Lindsay Lohan have probably never met. One likely couldn't pick the other out of a lineup. And yet, they are connected by invisible strings in a global tapestry of oil influence. It's like they're characters in the same sprawling drama, even if they're in different chapters. Both illustrate how deeply and broadly big oil reaches into lives. Vance shows us the political script, a politician who owes his platform to fossil fuel backers, parroting their talking points, helping stall climate action and keep the drillers happy. Lohan shows us the cultural script, a celebrity whose personal journey was swept into the orbit of oil-rich elites, becoming part of a soft power campaign she likely never realized she was in. One advances big oil's interests by voting in the Senate, the other by simply living her life under the glitter of a petro city. Is it a grand conspiracy? Not in the simplistic sense of secret cabals issuing orders. It's more nuanced and arguably more troubling. It's the conspiracy of money and influence that doesn't need to hide. The oil industry's power is so entrenched that it operates in plain sight, shaping careers and decisions as a matter of course. When you have virtually unlimited wealth, from selling the world's most indispensable commodity for over a century, you end up having tentacles everywhere by default. In our story, those tentacles quietly linked an Ohio Senate race and the fate of a Hollywood actress. It's almost poetic. As the world slowly learned about climate change and society began questioning big oil's future, one American figure, Vance, emerged to defend the industry's last stand, while another, Lohan, found refuge in the very extravagance that oil built. Both narratives serve to prolong oil's cultural dominance, one by policy, the other by perception. The lesson here is that big oil's legacy isn't just in CO2 levels or geopolitical wars, it's in our culture, our politics, our collective stories. Even as we pivot to electric cars and renewable energy, The influence of oil money lingers in the corridors of power and the penthouses of celebrity exiles. It pays to recognize these patterns, not to cook up wild theories for entertainment, though it is a fascinating juxtaposition, but to understand just how far-reaching the impact of the fossil fuel empire has been. In the end, whether you view this as a conspiracy or just capitalism's connective tissue, the overlap of JD Vance, Lindsay Lohan and Big Oil is a striking reminder. Follow the money, and you may find connections between worlds that seem worlds apart. Politics, fame, and oil, they've danced together for decades. This was just one story weaving them all together. Perhaps the next time you hear of a politician denying climate change or see a celebrity cozying up in Dubai, you'll wonder, how deep do the oil rabbit holes go? That curiosity, that questioning of obvious narratives, is the first step in uncovering the truth behind power. And as we've seen, the truth can indeed be stranger than fiction.